All right. So last week, 2 weeks ago, our last class, we were talking about Kabbalas B'nai Mashiach. And we didn't quite finish the chapter. We're kind of in the middle of it. But the last thing we talked about was the idea of Kabbalas B'nai Mashiach is really, we have to understand it in context of a king and a nation, and how a nation is connected to their king. And we talked about the fact that that could be on different levels. And then in fact, you have a very simple level of connection, which is like, a person just recognizes that that someone is a king, and therefore you want to you subjugate yourself to that king. And then there's a deeper connection, which is when you are really connected and you're dedicated to that king. And the Rebbe, explained that the idea of Kabbalas B'nai Mashiach is really to recognize, first of all, that Melech Mashiach is a king, and that we're connected. But it's not just that simple connection of a servant who just has Kabbalah soul and connects to the king, but that we recognize that we're really dedicated to the king on that level of Yechida. But even more so, the idea that we're really one with the king. And that was the concept of the idea of Yechia Melech that was said in the Sikha of Beit Nisan Shemem Chetz. The Rebbe said that when we say Yechi HaMelech, we're actually giving life, a chayas, to the king. And that was where we kind of ended off last time, this whole idea here. I'm just going to read that last paragraph again. Because the real connection that we have, the Jewish people have with Mashiach, is not the level of Kabbalas Ol, but we just, are subservient to the king. It's not only even a level of Yechida Shib Yechida, but it's actually a deeper connection of Chad Mamish Canal. So move on. Ikar Indishal Kabbalas B'nai Mashiach. That means that is really the main point about this idea of greeting Mashiach. Connecting ourselves with Mashiach in this level of being like one. So the Rebbe, along these lines, repeated over and over again in Tafshin Nun Beis this main point that Mashiach is really one with the essence of Hashem. And therefore every Jew is also one, with the Ein Sof of Hashem. And every Jew and the Nasi are therefore literally one. So we talk about Bnei Yisrael and the Torah, Hashem, Bnei Yisrael and the Torah are all one. We're talking about on the level of Asmos, Chad Mamish. And that's what the Rebbe was, we can understand, this is what the meaning of when the Rebbe said, when the Rebbe was talking about Kabbalas B'nai Mashiach, that we have to agree, we have to connect ourselves to Mashiach. So, what does this mean for us? So now we're continuing on to the new part of this, and the end of this chapter about Kabbalas B'nai Mashiach, and then we'll look at the Iyunim. Rivka and Rivki, both Rivkis. I know you're traveling, you're in cars, but if you do want to read and you have a bit of quiet around you, please let me know, and I'll give you the mic. Okay. So with this sort of introduction about the different levels of connection between a nation and a king, we can understand the words of the Rebbe. Shabbos told us of Nun Beis, Shamavar Canal, there the Rebbe explains, and we've mentioned this in our earlier chapters, that the whole idea of Mashiach is really the main essence of a Jew. That's why really the entire essence, the whole purpose of our entire lives is this concept of bringing to the days of Mashiach. And a Jew really lives this every single moment with every single breath that he takes. The Rebbe then said, in ways that are kind of like stumas, that kind of hidden. The meaning is a little bit hidden in the following ways. But Pratius, the Rebbe said in deeper, in more detail, the idea that all the days of our lives is about bringing Mashiach. This expresses in the fact that immediately upon when the person wakes up, you immediately feel, as soon as you wake up, the Shama immediately feels with breathing in the air, you feel this Indian of Mashiach. Avir shel Mashiach. It's the air of Mashiach. Chazal, Rucha shel Melech Mashiach. Mashiach mara al etzim de Mashiach. The breath, the air of Mashiach shows or indicates the essence of Mashiach. In other words, the revelation of this essence of Mashiach as a Melech Mashiach. So we will have to try to understand what was Rebbe trying to tell us here. So let's try to understand these words of the Rebbe when we're saying that we wake up in the morning, we have the air of Mashiach, with every breath we have Mashiach. What can this mean? And based on what we've just said before. This barley ill, so we can explain what we said. When we talk about the days of Mashiach, that's like a very general concept. But the main important part or point of Yemais Mashiach is Mashiach himself. Like the Rebbe said in the Sicha, the main chiddush, the main new thing about coming of Mashiach is the fact that Mashiach himself is revealed. That's the point. And it's because of the revelation of Mashiach himself that all the other elements about Yemais Mashiach come to be. So we have a base of Mikdash because we have Melech Mashiach. We have the Achdus of Bnei Yisrael because we have Melech Mashiach. So all the things that come about, we live in peace. We don't have HaMalchus because we have Melech Mashiach instead. So the main point is that we have a revelation of Melech Mashiach, and therefore all the other things of Yemais Mashiach come to be. So now we can also understand in what we're talking about. If the whole concept of Yemais Mashiach is, as the Rebbe said, connected to the essence of every Jew, until that becomes the main point of our entire lives, that every Jew literally lives this with every breath he takes. This is the main point then, also in connection to the connection that a Jew has to have with Melech HaMashiach and his yearning for that revelation of Melech HaMashiach. That means that this is really the main point of a Jew, of the life of a Jew, and really the key of his entire essence. And perhaps this is what the Rebbe meant when he said he feels with the breath of air that he takes. Avir shel Mashiach, the air of Mashiach, Ruach shel Mashiach, the spirit of Mashiach. This is meant to really show us the depth of this connection between a Jew with the air, literally, and the essence of Mashiach himself. So the Metzius, the concept of that the Mashiach is found, is such or that there is, it's like the tangible aspect of Mashiach. It's so real for a Jew. It's like breathing in the air that we take in every day. Just we breathe in every day, and it's a basis of our survival. So too, the concept of Mashiach is like the very air that we breathe. And this is really the greeting of Mashiach, the true meaning of Kabbalas Mashiach. It's this really inner and true connection that we have with Melech Mashiach, that it's something that is really, it's our whole essence, it's everything that we are on about. Okay, so this is Kabbalas Mashiach as we understand it from the Rebbe. So let's look again. Let's review the sikkum of what we just learned. The Rebbe started off the concept of Kabbalas Mashiach with explaining the idea of Kiddush Levana. Kiddush Levana midei chodesh mara al hischatzus Yisrael u'malchus David b'geula shlema. The Rebbe explaining that Kiddush Levana that we do every month, the whole idea of the renewal of the moon every month, represents the renewal of the Jewish people and the renewal of Malchus Beis David in the future Geula. And therefore, when we have Kiddush Levana and people bench Kiddush Levana every month, it really expresses our faith, and bitchonein, not only our faith but our trust, and our desire, our will. Our like we say, our faith and our trust and our will in the return of Malchus Beis David. Like we say in Kiddush Levana, we quote the pasuk Ubikshu es Hashem Elokeim the es David Malkam, that they seek out Hashem and David their king. That's why in our time, when the Rebbe said everything has been done, all the avodah that we need to do in Galus has been done, and everything depends only on Mashiach himself. Shama Rebbe Dagesh Miyuchad al Kiddush Levana mitach Kavana Miyuchedes Lamar Lozaris Bias David Malk Mashiach. So we say it only depends on Mashiach, not that it only depends on something that Mashiach is going to do, but it only depends on something we have to do concerning Mashiach himself. And that's what the Rebbe stressed is the Kiddush Levana, where we see that in benching of the Chaydish, that people have to have the right intention, they should dress up properly, they should take it seriously, because it really represents and to understand the intention of what they're saying at Kiddush Levana, where they have this intention to speed up the coming of Mashiach. In our generation, we have a king from Beis David who stood up and was ready to redeem the Jewish people. Therefore, the idea of you'll seek David, your king, takes on a new meaning for our generation. When we can surround ourselves around this king that we have, and connect ourselves to him. That's Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu. That's the acceptance of Mashiach. That's the greeting of Mashiach. In the weeks after the Rebbe spoke about this Kiddush Levana, the Rebbe spoke very clearly, in a very clear manner, about the fact that we have the revelation of Mashiach. He is the leader of our generation, and we need to greet him. We need to accept him. We move on. It's understood. And so we understand, because of how the Rebbe connected it, that this is what the Rebbe meant. This is the practical meaning of we'll seek out David our king. For us, is that we recognize the Nasi Adar as Mashiach Adar, and we accept that, we greet him, and we accept that upon ourselves in that manner. And as we saw in the Kiddush HaShluchim of that year, Rebbe stressed that all the details of our avodah and shlichus has to be permeated with this main point. How everything that we're doing is permeated with this one purpose, which is to greet Mashiach. That means every shliach in his place needs to prepare the Jews of his city and his place for Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach, through explaining and learning in Yonesh Mashiach. So how do we connect the skashas that we have to this Melech Mashiach comes about when we understand the whole point of Mashiach, and we learn about it and we know what it means. And then the skashas shel Amu Melech Kamadag Azul Mazu. We then go on to understand when we say we have to connect people to the Rebbe Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. What does that mean? Well, with his kashrus, there are many levels. So when we talk about the connection that we have to have in Mashiach, it's the highest level of this connection between a king and the nation. Not the level of a typical king where a person is, or the nation is just subservient and is afraid to go against what the king wants. And not only in a level of being completely dedicated to the king, but that we are really one essence with the king. Well, and as it's been with all the Arabim, as the Rebbe said, that for a chassid, he and his Rebbe and Hashem are all one thing. We move on. So when the Rebbe talked about his kashras, his connection that we have to have with Melech Mashiach, obviously the Rebbe is talking about this deeper connection, this idea of being and feeling that we are completely as one. Okay, so before we go into the Iyunim, are there any questions that we have up to this point, or any comments? Yep. All right. So let's go on to the Iyunim of this chapter. Okay. So we've mentioned a couple times the fact that the Rebbe said, "Ein hadavar toloi elo b'Mashiach tzidkenu atzmai," that the coming of Mashiach, this point, is only dependent on Mashiach himself. So again, we have to clarify what do we mean by this. Rifki Glasman, are you able to read? You want to read?
I could try. Is it noisy?
Nope.
We're driving in the car. No, it's fine. אין הדבר תלוי אלא במשיח צדקנו עצמי. בתחילת הפרק הוא דברי הרבה בשיחת שבס פרשת נויח תשנ"ב, שסיימו אז כל העניין כבר עשו שובה וכו' עד שהמסקנה שאין הדבר תלוי אלא במשיח צדקנו עצמי. So in the beginning of the parak, we brought the words of the Rebbe from the Sikha of Shabbos Parshas Noach Tavshin days, that everything is already finished and everyone already did tshuva, and the maskana is that there's nothing left besides Mashiach itself. It's dependent on Mashiach himself. Shemzeh mamshech u'moireh shekeimen she'eina davar tolei el b'Mashiach me'enachan lohosiv zehirus v'hidur b'kiddush levana v'chulei. And explained further that because it's the only thing now is dependent on Mashiach itself, so we have to be more careful, more mahuder in Kiddush Levana. So we have to understand a little more the words and to understand its meaning. Pashas Muban, she'en kavanase b'amira zu lahaser meitono esachrayis ulahatil oisal Mashiach tzedkenu. So we can understand that it's these words certainly do not mean that we take off of ourselves the responsibility and we're putting it on to Melech Mashiach. Ki kol oijam Mashiach tzedkenu leibo v'poil v'golei terem mileinu es tafkidenu v'achrayis oid mutel selenu. Because as long as Mashiach did not come in actuality and revealed, so it means we did not finish our tafkid, and our responsibility is still on us. And so we see clearly in the sikhas that were after this sikha and in the sikha itself that the Rebbe continues to demand from us more and more things to do in order to bring Mashiach b'poil. So the meaning is just to us, the purpose is just to explain to us where we're holding. We should know what we should.
Yep. We lost you. So we know where we have to, like what we have to focus on. I think we lost Rifki. Okay. Because if it was dependent on tshuva itself, if we knew it was dependent on tshuva, like we know, like Chazal told us, then and that would have been the main point, that we would have been, that would have been the priority, right? That we would be busy with tshuva. But go ahead, Rifki, you back? Okay.
Yeah. Hine, where do you reading? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Shemavarim lanu sheina davar toil el Mashiach tzedkenu atzmai harei ze nase hamasima achi el yain. But now, if we explain that it's only dependent on Mashiach itself, so it makes the task the highest task, the highest.
This becomes a priority. Yep,
a priority. וכפי שממשיך מיד בשיחה, שההויל ואין הדבר תלוי על משיח tzedkenu עצמי, לכן המספקש הוא תוספת זהירוס והידר בקידוש לבונה וכו', שזהו עניין הקושי ישירוס המשיח tzedkenu עצמי. And as the Rebbe continues in the Sikha, that since it's only dependent on Mashiach himself, so that's why he's asking that we should be more careful in Kiddush Levana, etc., because that is something that is directly connected to Mashiach tzedkenu.
Right.
But
so it's not that it depends on Mashiach himself in the way that sounds, but it depends on something to do with Mashiach himself. In other words, it depends on us to do something related to Mashiach himself. Exactly.
But al derech hasicha shel Shabbos Parshas Sara Tashnan days bo mavar baricha sheshluchim kfar simu es havodah shel avodas miyanis al derech ha'amash Shabbos Parshas Noach kfar asu tshuva. This is as in the Sikha of Shabbos Parshas Sara Tashnan days, where the Rebbe explains in length that the shluchim already finished their avodah of avodas miyanis. As the Rebbe said in the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Noach, that everyone has already done tshuva. V'sham baruch she'en kavanas liftar me'avoda, ela gila gdara chadasha shel avoda ke'esh, avoda v'shluchos achshav hi binyanim shel kabbalas pnei Mashiach tzidkenu. So it's obvious that the Rebbe didn't mean to excuse us from our work, but it means that we just got to a new level of our avoda, and the avoda and the shluchos now is specifically in accepting Mashiach tzidkenu. Al derech ha'amar b'Shabbos Parshas Noach ubikshu as David Malka, as mentioned in the above sicha. So it's time to ask for David HaMelech. Hamashmos ha'aktuala shel Kiddush Levana. Psech ha'perek nizbar she'eschatshus ha'levana la'achar ha'helem meira al Kiddush Malchus David la'achar zman ha'galos v'amayim shel Kiddush Levana meira la'amuna v'hapitocham v'tzipiyah shelanu la'achzaras Malchus David li'eshen al yedei Melech HaMashiach. So in this parak, we explain that the renewal of the moon after it was disappeared, it shows on the renewal of Malchus Beis David after the Kabbalas, and Kiddush Levana itself shows on our emuna and bitachon and our hope and awaiting the return of Malchus Beis David to the way it was through Melech HaMashiach. Aולי יש להוסיף ולומר שעניין זה נגיע עוד יותר בתקופה שבה משיח נכסה לאחר הסגלוסי, מצפים שישב יסגל לכדי פרק למד. So maybe we can add and say that this idea is even more nagia in the time when Mashiach is hidden after he was already revealed, and we're waiting that he would return and be revealed, as we spoke about, what we will speak about in Perek Lamed. She'oz helem halavana v'chidusha mekabel mashmas miyuchedes b'negei l'melech HaMashiach עצמו שנמצא helem behelem u'ma'aminim u'metzapim shesh v'yizgala. So therefore, the fact that so now it has an even more special meaning to do with Melech HaMashiach itself, that he's now hidden, and we believe and we are waiting that he will return and be revealed. Lamed Ches Aleph. שמפרש שמיעוט הלבונה וחידושו מרמזים לא על תחילת הגלוס שביטל מלך מבית דוד, כפי שמשמע מפשט דברי חז"ל הנ"ל, אלא על סוף זמן הגלוס. So there it's explained that the lessening of the moon and its renewal are hinting at not the beginning of the Kabbalas when Melech Beis David was cancelled, meaning it was batel, the Malchus, as we would think it means, but it's referring to the end of the Kabbalas. After the Malchus Beis David was completely ended. The Reish Goyle bebobel benasi be'Eretz Yisrael yuchlo shuv yischadesh malchusay. And even the Reish Goyle in Bavel and the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael also ended, and but this all will be renewed. No, the malchus will be renewed. Pizem mefarish marsha es a siman she'asa Rebbe l'kiddush hachodesh. V'loze amar lei Rebbe shalach li simna David melech Yisrael v'choli. V'tzoni leimar da'av she'akisa shel Levana hu siman ra l'nesiyas sheyichle. Hine mitzad acher hu siman ha'toiva. David Melch Yisrael Chai V'Kayam Shachar Sheyichlu Anasiyas Yischadesh Malchusay Yitzmach Keren David. So according to what the Maharsha says about the siman that the siman that the that's Rebbe Yehuda said about Kiddush HaChodesh. And that's what Rebbe said. He said, "Send me a siman of David Melech HaMashiach," meaning that the fact that the Levana is hidden seems like a bad sign because the Nesiah is finished. But from on another side, it's a good sign because it shows that David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. And after the Nesiah was over, it will again be renewed and ואולי יש לאמר בדומה למרשה, אך בדרך אחרת, שתכלול ממשלת בית דוד לגמרי. הכוונה היא לא רק על הזמן שביטלה משרש ריש הגוילה, שגם אחר כך יש המשך המלכות בית דוד, על ידי המנהיגים שבכל דור כמובן בפרקים הקודמים, אלא בעיקר כנ"ל על התקופה בה משיח נכסה, ואז כאילו בטל לגמרי מלכות דוד. על זה בא הסימן של חידוש הלבונה שיושב יסגלה. So maybe we could say similar to what the Maharsha says, but in a different way, that the end of Memshel's Beis David, the complete end of Memshel's Beis David, refers to not the time when it was already no Reish HaGoyla, because even so, there was a continuation of Malchus Beis David because there were manhigim in every generation, as we spoke earlier. But maybe Kiddush Lavana is a siman that it will actually return and he will be Niskala.
Hey, Rivki, you're breaking up. I'm not sure if it's for everyone who hears this or just me, but we're losing you. So meanwhile, let me just recap what Rivki was saying. So the idea the Rebbe spoke about Kiddush Levana, right? Why is Kiddush Levana the point that shows our Muda in Mashiach? Because during Kiddush Levana, we talked about this idea of the moon, right? And we talked about the fact that we believe in that Bnei Israel are seeking David their king. Now, what is it about the moon? The idea is that the moon, we know, disappears and then reappears every single month. So that is really the concept of representing how Mashiach himself, Malchus Beis David, disappeared and comes back again. Now, where's that element of it disappearing and coming back? Where do we see that from? So we see that this is something that's also discussed in Gemara. And it talks about this whole idea that the moon disappearing and coming back represents, again, this idea of Malchus Beis David is going to be minimized. In other words, going to disappear and come back. Now, what is that talking about? So we said that initially you might think, oh, it's talking about, like originally, right? At the very beginning of Kabbalas, Malchus Beis David kind of disappeared, and then eventually it'll come back again. And what the Maharsha explains is that it's not talking about that time when it initially disappeared, and not even the time when you say it initially disappeared because once we didn't have a Reish Garla and a Nasi in Eretz Yisrael, who also came from Beis David, and once we didn't have that anymore, that's what it means with that it disappeared, and that's the belief that it's going to come back again. Maharsha said, no, we're talking about the really the very end of Gullus, at the very, very end of Gullus, when there's not just when Malchus Beis David itself is no longer, but really even at the very end when we don't have any leaders. Now, when we look at that, you could say, well, so in that sense, they're saying when you look at Kiddush Levana, on one hand, you could say when the moon is completely hidden that looks like a bad sign, right? That we're going to lose Malchus Beis David. So you can look at it on the negative, that it's no longer there, that it's hidden, or you can look at it on the positive sign. Even though you can't see it, we know that it's going to reappear again, because that's the idea of the moon. And that's the idea of David Melech Yisrael, Chai V'Kayim, that even though we don't see it, it's going to come back. Now, what we're saying is that we could say then, and that's what we're talking about here as an Iyun, that really, if we look at this message of the Maharsha, who's saying the whole idea of Kiddush Levana and its reference to Mashiach is not just about the time when Malchus of David finished, and even when the Rosh Hashanah finished, but if we think about it in our time, when we have this idea that we had in our time a revelation of Mashiach, the Rebbe himself saying that we have Mashiach, the Nasi Hadar is Mashiach Shebedar, and then now it's hidden again, and we don't see it clearly. We don't see the Rebbe clearly physically, but this is really the idea of Kiddush Levana and having the proper kavanah during Kiddush Levana, that we recognize, know that this is a hidden state, but like the moon, it's still there. It just is going to reappear. And that's why we continue on. This means that we have it's not that it's hidden and that, okay, we don't see the Rebbe, that's it. Malchus Beis David is gone, that's it, it's bottled forever. It's not true, but it's a symbol of the Kiddush Levana that is going through. The Rebbe will come back and reveal himself once again to us. And again, we're going to see this. Where else do we see this? We say during Kiddush Levana another pasuk it's possible in Shir Medal Haharim, leaping over the hill, bounding over the hills, like what? Again, this is Shir Shir. Daime Doidi Tzvi, that my beloved is like a tzvi, like a gazelle, or a young stag, right? A young one. He's there, he's standing behind our wall. He's peering through the windows. He is gazing through the windows and peering through the lattice. Okay, so this is the concept. This is the pasuk that's being quoted during Kiddush Levana. So when we say this pasuk, that he's compared to a gazelle or like a young stag, which is like a young deer. This idea, why is Mashiach compared to a deer or a gazelle or a young deer? Why? Because this is referring to the idea. This is really to the hiddenness of Mashiach after he's revealed. This is what Chazal say, that what? That just like the deer, what do we find with the deer? It appears and then it disappears, and it comes back and it disappears again. So too, the final Redeemer, this is Shmais Rabbah, Shir Shirim Rabbah, the final Redeemer, the final Goyal, will reveal himself to them, and then he will go and be hidden from them again. So when this is again Shir Shirim Rabbah, there's a puzzle from Shir Shirim that called Daidi, my beloved, is like a deer. Right, deer, that's what you do. They kind of hide, they're camouflaged. You see them, then you don't see them. You don't see them. So Shir Shirim Rabbah, that just says this is like the Goel Achron who's going to then hide again from them. So when we are expressing our trust. That just like this moon, revealed after this is a very, very powerful thing to understand in terms of the time that we're in now, especially the time that we're in right now, where people often we hear, especially, just this morning, I was giving a share, and people in our community talk about this idea. Well, how can you still believe in all of this when we have the Gimel Tammuz and we can't see the Rebbe anymore? What does that mean? How could it be? How could the Rebbe be Mashiach if we don't see him anymore? And here we have an explanation very clearly from the Rebbe about what this means and how we can explain it. Okay. Continuing on, the moon that is not seen. We can also point out here Pashas Noach Tafshinun Beis was the first of a series of sichos where the Rebbe explained the meaning of this cycle of the moon from different points of view. And what sichos were those? Sichos Shabbos Pashas Toldos. So we had it first in Noach, then we had it again in Pashas Toldos, which was Rosh Chodesh Kislev. But Mavar Es Mashmusa Shel Moiled HaYarech Mechadash, where the Rebbe explained the meaning of literally the birth of the new moon. Shemira al Hiskalos Etzem D'Yisrael, that represents the revelation of the essence of the Jewish people. The Hiskalos Etzem D'Mashiach, and the revelation of the essence of Mashiach. Sichas Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach. Then in Parshas Vayishlach, which was the 14th, 15th of Kislev, Bamavaris Mashmusa Shel Hachatzi Hasheni Shel HaChodesh, where the Rebbe explained the second half of the month. When we see the moon now getting smaller and smaller. Shemira al Kiruv HaMakabel, Yarech el Mashpia, which really represents why does the moon get smaller? Because as the moon gets closer and closer to the sun, it gets smaller and smaller. In other words, we see less and less of it. So they explain that. What is the idea that as it gets the Makabel, the Yarech is Makabel, it receives the light from the sun. So the sun is like the Mashpia. And as the moon gets closer to the sun, it becomes smaller. Because it's becoming with the sun. And the representative is going to be that we Bnei Yisrael, the Yareach, and Hashem, Shemesh, is going to become all one. And then we see again further, Shebelel Vav, the Chag Sukkos, Tafshin Beis, on the 6th night of Sukkos of that year, his Rebbe es Damai Sharab Hilam Parich. The Rebbe mentioned the saying of Reb Hilam Parich, Shebeiz Damas Musiemis Kimat V'Lo Haya Be'Efsharis La'arach Kiddush Levana, who said that in numerous times he did not have the ability to actually say Kiddush Levana. It was only at the end, after number of much later, that he was able to do so. And he said afterwards, and he said afterwards that if he doesn't do Kiddush Levana, he doesn't know how he's going to be able to pass the night. So what does that mean? If he can't do Kiddush Levana, he doesn't know how he's going to survive the night. It could have been connected to the fact that year, Adar Rishon of Nun Beis, the moon was actually covered with very thick clouds, and they could not do Kiddush Levana that month. So, and interesting enough, the Rebbe mentioned earlier before, if you look at the footnotes here, should become a sichas ba'isat kufa mashmash melachatchila. The Rebbe ratzal ladalagas oisei chodesh. A number of times the Rebbe said that he would like that we could like skip over the month of Adar, right? That was referenced earlier on in our sefer. Okay, so that's another point, right? If we don't see the moon, how do we survive it? Because the whole idea of the moon is really representing this idea of renewal. And that really expresses our bitachon. And that's the way we survive the Galus, by recognizing, looking at the moon every month and knowing that even when it is hidden, it's still there and it is going to be revealed once more. And finally, Mashiach himself. In connection to what we explained about this whole idea of Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach, greeting Mashiach, we should like point out the actions of the Kabbalas of Neshech everybody do this. The end of Cheshire that year, they were encouraged, aroused to deal even more with this. B'yom Chav Ches Teves, Ois Shana, Yom Hulag Tishlar Banas Chana, Rebbe, the birthday of the Rebbe and Chana. There were many gatherings in many places around the world around this concept of just Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. And with very clear intention that Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach was Kabbalas Pnei HaRebbe as Melech Mashiach. And it's known and publicized at that time, they got many answers and much encouragement from the Rebbe for these gatherings. Muvad, you're doing, and in addition to the answers that are well known from that time, that was Tatus, right? The beginning of Shvat, the Sikha is the beginning of Shvat of that year. The Rebbe elaborated on and emphasized the Mila, the advantage of Neshei Yisrael, and the merit that they have to bring the Gula. So there's a whole kuntras that came out on this whole idea of the mila of Neshei B'nai Yisrael of our generation. Perhaps we can understand. To understand that the Rebbe is speaking about the mile of woman and giving all this encouragement, talking about the mile of woman and their schools that we're going to be redeemed, came as a direct result of this pulos that they did in this area of getting people to accept the Rebbe as Mashiach, Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. Okay, so finally, our final point here, Ha'achana Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. So what do we have to do? What's our preparation for this? So, so we spent quite a bit of time explaining what this expression means. So, okay, Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach is connecting ourselves to the Rebbe. It's his kashrus. It's recognizing that we are one with the King, accepting the Rebbe as our melech, as our king, and connecting ourselves really, but essence to essence. However, we also find that the Rebbe in that time also spoke a lot about a hachana, a preparation for Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. We have to understand, what does that mean? So you have Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach, and then there's hachana Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. So what does that mean? Especially when we look at the Rebbe's words. The Rebbe said, so according to what the Chazal say, that everything's already finished, right? We finished all the things. And as the Frierdiker Rebbe also said, we have already done Shuvah. And we've already stand ready to greet Mashiach. So what's our avodah? What's our shlichus now? To be prepared, practically, to greet Mashiach, but Pal Mamish, right, in a very practical, literal way, and to express our shlichus in this, to fulfill our shlichus, our very special shlichus of this time, which is Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach. So if you look at it on a very superficial level, the Rebbe seems to be contradicting himself from beginning to the end. What do we mean? Because at first the Rebbe says, here we are standing ready to greet Mashiach, and then so are we ready? Are we ready prepared, or do we have to be prepared? So are we ready, or are we ready? It seems that the Rebbe was saying both in one sentence. But if we again look more carefully again at the words of the Rebbe, move on. We understand that there's kind of two preparations. There's a preparation that's already finished already, and there's a chana that's only beginning. Sha'achana ba'alma histaima, meaning the preparation to greet Mashiach. In other words, the preparation in general in the world to greet Mashiach, that's already finished. In other words, the Bir Netzaitz was done, the tshuva was done, that element in the world in general was done. But now we have to start a new preparation. So the words of the Rebbe, now it's the new preparation, right, in very practical, actual ways, accepting the Melech King b'pal mamish. So what does that mean? But now we have to understand, what does that mean? What is this idea of mechanim b'pal and to be ready b'pal mamish? My Kabbalas behevdo ben hachana stam la'chana b'pal. So what is the difference between saying b'chlal, just be prepared, and be prepared b'pal, right? But being prepared isn't being prepared meaning that you're doing something. What does that mean, being prepared b'pal versus just being prepared? So perhaps we could explain it like this. It could be an analogy like a king who sends off messengers, sends off his people to very far away places where no humans are found. He sends them off to these places where no man lives and says, your job is to go to these far-fetched places and make the place suitable for people to live there. And he promises them, and he promises them that when you are done your job in these far-flung places that I'm going to send you, and you make it habitable for people, right? So people can actually live there. Then the king himself promises that he's going to come and join them in those places. So these shluchim, they go and they do their job. They prepare those places as the king desires. And so to complete their job, and the king lets them know, Yashakayach, you've done your job. I'm getting ready to come and visit you and come to live there. As soon as they get the news that the king is actually coming, so then they start preparing for when the king is going to arrive. Right? So there's two kinds of preparation. There's a general preparation, and then the preparation for the king's arrival. So it's clear that all the avodah that those shluchim of the king were doing in preparing the places that they were living so that people can live there, that was all a preparation for the king to be able to come, because that's what the whole condition was. They went out to these places to prepare, and the king said, when you prepare the place for me to come, I'll come and live there. So obviously all the work that they were doing was to prepare for the king. But it's also very clear right? You can't compare all the avodah that they were doing all those years to get the place ready for the king to the preparation that they're going to make now that they got the notification that the king said, I'm coming, get ready, right? You've done your work, I'm on the way. Because until this point, because until this point, all the time, they were mainly focusing on building up and making the land a place where people can live. And even though they had, obviously there was an inner intention, the whole time was for the king to come, but their focus was getting the place ready. Right, that was the whole point. So they were getting it ready, but their focus was really on the building and the getting the land prepared. But as soon as they get the notification from the king that he's actually coming, then it's very different. Then they're already starting to get prepared and with the celebrations and how they're going to greet the king and what they're going to do for the king's arrival. And that's a completely different kind of preparation for the king's coming. So now we can understand what the Rebbe was saying in that sikha. Yes, until now, Jewish people throughout the world, we've been preparing, or in general, for the king to come. Right? We've been doing all our avodah throughout Galus to make the world a dir b'tachtanim, to be mevarin tzaitzos all over the world. We've done that. But now Our avodah now is to get ready, b'payal, completely different thing, to get ready to greet Mashiach. That's what we're on about. It's not about preparing the world anymore in general. It's about getting ready just to greet the king. This is what we're talking about. You could say the avodah of the Jewish people throughout all of history, throughout all the generations, can be considered as a preparation for greeting Mashiach, because that is the whole point of all the avodah of Geula and the coming of Mashiach. That's what all our avodah is. However, but nevertheless, the avodah in general that we do in Torah, mitzvahs, and in the world is not directly connected to the coming of Mashiach, to greeting Mashiach himself. It's mainly dealing with other things that, at the end of the day, the goal of all of those other things is to bring Mashiach. But now we have a different focus. Now, when we have in a generation, when the Rebbe told us very clearly that the avodah has been done, so on one hand, so we learn we're already standing ready and we merit to greet Mashiach. On the other hand, in Kabbalas hadazu, once we get this notification, now we start with we really have to start preparing. Now we really have to prepare to greet the king. To have the complete revelation of Mashiach. And that's why right now our focuses cannot be the same focus that we had when the Rebbe gave us all the mitzvahs to do. That can't be the same focus that we have now. Now our focus is literally, we are getting ready to greet the king, b'pal mamish. And therefore the focus now has to be in this connection between the Melech and the Am, the idea of Bikshu as David Malcolm, that we seek out and we ask for, and we David our king, so that when the king appears, he will arrive and greet a nation that is prepared and waiting for him, right? So there's a different preparation, not in general preparing the world, but a preparation to greet Mashiach himself. Maybe Taka all be prepared and greet him already today.
Wow, that was a very special share. I'm so glad I got in.
I'm so glad you did too.
I'm already in Yerushalayim. I'm ready here.
No, you have a head start.
Yeah, we'll see you soon, Sara.
Okay.
See you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was very nice, very, very exciting. Take care. All the best, Kol Tov.